This podcast was brought to you by Borzilla Entertainment, LLC. Borzilla, roar. Borzilla, roar.
They strip search of all the children. And then we leave.
You leave?
No, we... I'm still tore up over her people.
Preacher would get so mad about, worrying about us fornicating.
We all try to get along.
My face ain't normal, it's a damn newspaper!
To get along.
Ain't normal. There's something odd in that.
We all try to get.
The hardest part for me to swallow is
I woke up this morning and I packed a suitcase.
There's no normal life, White. It's just life. Get on with it.
Alright, thank you, Analog Heart. This is going to be my little show where I interview people and allow them to tell the stories that make them unique, or the stories that make their background unique. I will be providing a disclaimer for every episode, just letting people know, maybe a trigger warning, what exactly we're going to talk about. So if there's something that may cause you emotional pain, then, we don't want you to listen and have that. If not, you think, hey, well, this will be something fun to hear a unique perspective on. I hope that's the case with all of them. Another thing, we're going to play this one a little vanilla. I've bleeped some of the worst stuff in the intro. It's going to be a podcast that sometimes has adult themes, adult language. It's going to have some irreverent language. But I'd rather people kind of dip their toes in with this, see if does this sound like something I'm going to enjoy. I don't want people jumping in and being offended out the gate and being like, this isn't what I want, and writing letters and being angry. I'd rather just hear this and be like, yeah, I'm not going to deal with that. If your tolerance for religious, political, whatever jokes, adult humor, anything like that is, if our line is a little bluer than yours, I'd rather you just go listen to something else and, let us broadcast for the freaks that we're targeting. I'd like to thank Analog Heart for providing the music that we use for our intro and outro. Just a little background on that. My buddy Austin is the bass player. We've been friends for a long time, had many a conversation about life and music, especially comedy. Just a really good dude. I told him I was going to be doing a podcast, and he's like, hey, man, you should play some of our music. And I took that as a license to cut up his music with our clips and make an intro song, and then just pick what I think is really one of their best and most beautiful songs. A song that really displays Liz's vocals, and I made that our outro. And then I sent it to him, and was like, I hope I can still use this. And he ran it by the band. I don't know if everybody's on board or even cares, but he said he and Liz were okay with it, so I decided to incorporate it into the show, and I'm very thankful that they let us do that. So the first thing we're going to do every episode after our disclaimer or trigger warning is we're going to introduce our guests and allow them to not only let them tell what ain't normal about their story, but we're going to allow them to promote whatever thing they want to promote. It's not an endorsement. It's just a thank you for your time. If I'm costing people a couple of hours, sometimes a day, to drive here and hang out in the studio and interview with me, and I could at least allow them to try to promote the thing they're into. So we're gonna call that pimp your shit. If we do any episodes that don't have a explicit content label on it, then we may just call that promote your stuff. We may change the intro and everything, because there's going to be some opportunities where I want to interview somebody who'll want, maybe their family to listen, or maybe there won't be a time for adult humor and everything in every episode. So that's why we're gonna have two versions of this show. At times most of the time it's gonna be explicit content, and sometimes we're going to have an episode here and there that's clean content. We'll try to label them appropriately, or at least give you a heads up, like, hey, you might want to avoid this one. There's a lot of jokes. So after that, then we'll get into our interviews. So right now we're going to play a clip from the first episode. The first episode is going to be my story, but I've got a couple of friends along with me to kind of pull it out of me. one of my best friends, Kevin Woods, award-winning filmmaker Kevin Woods, a guy that I've worked with on several personal projects, artistic things. We did a podcast together before. We've gone on TV as movie critics before, and he had the chops to do it. I was just tagging along. We worked on jobs together before. Just a guy I kind of want in my corner whenever I can have him. I hope he does more episodes of this in the future. Also, I had a girl I've known most of my life. I met at this crazy Christian daycare I went to as a kid that involved a lady that was very much a Becky Fisher from Jesus Camp kind of person. So I met this girl at the daycare, and we've known each other. We knew each other a little bit then, and then recently, since like 2013, we kind of reconnected, and so we were sharing our experiences from there, and she's going to be coming up in another episode. Episode 2 is kind of her story in a different situation, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, we're gonna do a little bit of my story, or just a little background. The story that precedes what you're gonna hear is a little story about a little girl claiming to be possessed by demons who stole $4 at this daycare from another kid. And then as a result, all of us kids got strip searched by 2 teenage girls. So we're coming out of that story and leading into the next one you're about to hear. Okay, enjoy this. Yeah, that was the moment. That was the first moment when I was like, this lady's fucking bad. The next moment when I was just like, oh yeah, she's really crazy, is we went to the Orangeburg Playhouse and we saw a magician. And like a little after the show, I'm at this point maybe 9 or 10. I go up and like he had something where he had like a blank bandana. And he threw a bunch of like polka dot little dots up in the air, and he's just flipped the bandana, and all of them ended up on the bandana in a perfect like pattern. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's a wizard, you know? But he left all his props on stage, and he went like off stage, and like me and like 2 or 3 of the other kids like go walking up to the stage, and I like grab this bandana, and I'm like, oh, it's tape. Look, there's this tape on the. And he came out, and he's like, hey, this is my craft, don't touch my stuff. And he's like, as he should have been. I mean, it's his job to fool people.
Y'all little bad should have left this alone.
Yeah. And so like we get back to
little demons,
the daycare, and some kids like, well, I wonder how real magic is done. I'm like, just like you saw today. It's like, hey, look over here, and I'm going to do something with this hand, and or you know, I'm going to do this, but it's going to involve an adhesive you don't know about. And she's like, no, like real magic. I'm like, there's not any such thing as real magic. Magic is just tricking people. And she went back and told this lady that ran the daycare, and the lady came back and blessed me out.
Oh, she should have. Absolutely should have, because how old were you?
I was 9 or 10.
9 or 10, you had no imagination whatsoever. 9 or 10.
You had already figured it out.
No, and that's man. You know, at 9 or 10, I still thought I could invent a bicycle that could fly. I used to take cardboard wings to my bicycle and jump ramps and thinking I was going to fly off to the moon. You know, you had no imagination
You
whatsoever.
didn't know what fornication was.
I never created a story about demons, and I'd seen the demon murder case at like 5, and I never walked around like, you will die. She came back and there is magic, and it was in the Bible. Remember when Moses turned the staff into the serpents or whatever the he said? And I'm like, oh, yeah, things are really off the rails. So this was probably the second year I was there. I think Christie might have been gone by then. But
I don't remember the whole magician thing, but I do remember that it was wrong for us to like magicians. But I don't really remember why.
All right. If y'all have seen Jesus Camp, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, it gives me
Becky
anxiety.
Fisher?
It's been a couple years. Oh, longer than that since I've seen
Becky Fisher was the lady praying over the projector.
Oh, yes.
Just like we prayed over the...
She's almost an identical twin of that woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I know.
Yeah.
She gives me anxiety. I really think a lot of the stuff that you're telling me has been blocked out because it was just too much for me as a kid.
Yep, but that lady, when she's praying over the projector and everything, just like we prayed over the microphones before we started today.
Exactly.
She was so much this lady. Like, this lady was her, only older, and she'd been out in the sun more. Like, that's exactly, if you're picturing someone's behavior, she's Becky Fisher from Jesus Camp.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, that was another insane thing from her.
So, wait a minute. So, biblical magic was okay, but satanic magic, what they believed was satanic.
Oh, we had to have another talk, like where she got up in front of everybody. It's like, I know Johnny's been telling you some people that magic isn't real. Like, me again here. But we know that magic is real, right? Because it says so in the Bible. And now, what that magician was doing was not real magic, but it was demonic. Did you see how agitated he got at children?
She actually went there.
Yeah, she went there.
Saying the woman that strip search children
I understand.
for $4.
I understand that.
That may have been the teenage girl's idea. I have no idea whose idea it was. I just know we got strip searched. Okay, so that was the crazy Fundy daycare story, at least part of it. There's a lot more stories involved in that episode. Just a bunch of things about growing up in the crazy Christian daycare during the midst of the satanic panic in the 80s. And again, where I met Christie. And up next, we're going to go back into what's ain't normal about her story. So here it is. This is Christie's story.
Oh, my story.
Yeah, let's get into some ain't normal stuff. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, let's see. The last time we were talking about your experience with the daycare. And so
Yes.
If we jump a few years ahead, my mom gets married to someone, and they are now in this church. This church that I was sucked into against my will, but I was very young, so I had no will. We weren't allowed to have will at that age. And I guess the very first thing I remember about the church is I was there for a couple weeks. The kids were pretty nice, lots and lots of children in the area. And then one day I am approached by the kids to talk to me about my clothes and my dress and how I should not wear pants. It's unchristian-like. I need to wear skirts, and they need to be this length, and you can't wear any rouge or anything. So I guess I'm about 13 years old, around that age, 14. And so I thought it was just very odd. The kids sat me down like adults would and told me all about what I was allowed to wear and what I wasn't allowed. And if I was going to be a good Christian, then the dress came with the good Christian kind of stuff. And I kind of came from an area where I was Southern Baptist. Nobody really talked about clothes much. We did our camps, things of that nature. So it was very odd to be approached very specifically about all of these things. And most of it came from the preacher's children. Had a big, large family, so they all approached me, sat me down, kind of told me how it was. So that was my first very uncomfortable experience.
Do you think that the preacher himself asked his children to talk to you?
Absolutely.
Maybe he pointed you out?
Absolutely. At this time, I didn't think so. But
if you properly indoctrinate your children, you don't have to ask them to indoctrinate their friends.
After years passed and being more associated with the family and even friends, best friends with the daughter and stuff, I learned that they do a lot of table talk about a lot of people that come to church there. So it's very interesting, even how they build their sermons. It's on the people in the audience, and they'll call you out. So, the first year that you're there, you notice that some of the preaching's geared toward just what happened to the man down the street, but you're like, oh, God must have drawn it to that. Oh, the sermon fits because they convince you that anything that happens is for a reason and God's doing it and all this stuff. So, if the man down the street went to the bar and got drunk one night, the next Sunday there was a big preaching about how alcohol was so horrible and how it was committing sins and how you're sinning against God. You must not really be saved, which was their whole entire thing. People got saved so many times in that church.
So it wasn't a kind of like the Southern Baptists when they believe once saved, always saved. This was
they believe the same thing, but they said if you sin, then you must not have really gotten saved. Because if you would have really gotten saved, there's no way you would have committed that kind of sin. Maybe you thought a bad thought, or maybe you got angry because you dropped your brush. I don't know what they're thinking. But if you went out and drank a beer, then you must not have really gotten saved. So you need to do it all over again. So it was like they
perpetual saving machine.
Yes, exactly. To constantly keep people in guilt and people in doubt and not sure about what's happening. So they're so consumed with the am I going to hell that they can't even have a normal functioning life. So that was but you learn that over years of time. You can't learn that in short periods of time there. And people kind of, other than the core people, maybe the core 20 people that were there for years and years, a lot of people were in and out. Once they started seeing the light, they hit the brakes. But it was a few of us, that were stayed and that kind of stuff. So that was probably my first odd experience, to have these very, very religious children like approach me and sit me down like adults and kind of talk to me about my situation. And so anyway, I was one of the kids that conformed to it. I constantly tried to learn, constantly tried to make changes, adjust anything that I could to do it, and it just progressively, we saw more things within the church that the sermons, like I told you, they would specifically call people out. And then as you got closer to the 15 age, that's when all the weird sexual shit started happening, where you were always sexualized, always, whether you were dating someone or not dating someone. I even had a relative, very, very close relative, telling me that I turned him on because of the clothes that I would wear.
That's pretty up.
Yeah, and in a very odd setting too. So, this person is over at my house, extremely close relative, but been in the church for years, and basically said that because of what I was wearing, I was turning them on, and that I needed
small
to be careful.
child, your cleavage is really giving me a boner over here, and that is a sin. Stop it.
Exactly.
Lust.
Yes.
Was this Jerry Seinfeld and George Costanza? There was cleavage. It doesn't have an age.
Yeah,
That's why I poked. That's why I peeked.
Yeah, so you constantly were worried about what you were doing and guilty all the time. And then, of course, being in puberty, you have these natural urges. So you're like, the boys are cute and you want to date and stuff, but then you're constantly, like it's progressed so much further than what your mind is. Your mind's like, oh, the boys, I want to hold hands. And they're like, you don't want to get behind the alley. Like, what is behind the alley, dude? So you were like, and I was one of the people
I'm
that
gonna your butt.
exactly. I was one of the people that conformed to it. Like, every time I would learn that I wasn't doing something that was godly, I would change. So, eventually I started looking at my mother like, you're wearing pants.
Oh,
how dare, so you became that person that was constantly obsessed
Judgmental.
of everything.
Yeah.
They put me in a Christian school, which was they tried to take me out of public school and put me in Christian school, and I had a fit the first year. And they said, nah, let's do it the next year. We'll ease her into it. I had the talk from the children and then put right into the Christian school.
Now, there are different levels of Christian schools, especially all throughout the Southeast. I know South Carolina, Georgia, the real South, the real South states have a lot of them. There are a lot of motives for those. But Georgia wasn't just one of the standard, hey, a church is associated with this, and we've somehow created in the 60s when black people started coming to our schools. It was it was like Ken Ham level ridiculous school, right?
So one of the really odd things, so it's Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. So that Independent Fundamental means a lot. They stand away. They don't believe in Southern Baptist. They don't believe in Methodist. They really believe that theirs is the only true anything. You have to be baptized a certain way. You have to attend church a certain way. You have to be saved a certain way. And if you do certain things, you couldn't have been saved. And then they would find other churches that were like them, and they would basically, your kids need to go here. So they found a school and said, all the kids, if you're a good parent, if you want your kids to go to heaven, then this is the school you go to. So we all tracked up to St. Matthews, South Carolina, right up here to this school. And
was this the one that was on self-paced learning?
No,
that was
a different one.
Yeah,
that one's actually fairly normal compared to this. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So when we went there, we didn't believe in any music with a beat. You were not allowed to have any music with a beat. Piano,
music
organ
without a beat
only.
is poetry.
If you had a beat, it would make your body want to move a certain way, and therefore it was sexualized.
Yeah, okay.
That's why they named it rock and roll. Rocking and rolling is.
So you couldn't have any of that. So when we went to this other Independent Fundamental school, there was a gentleman there. He was the preacher and the principal. And he was quite odd, just the same. And I remember we were supposed to bring a picture of ourselves when we were young. And my mom had this really cute 5-year-old picture of me in this little flowery dress. And, I was all excited because it's always hung on my wall and brought it in. And within 3 seconds, the man picked out my nipple that was showing Now I'm 5 in this picture.
Was it cold in this picture? Did 5-year-olds have nipples?
Well, there was enough of the corner showing, because it was a sundress, enough of the corner that he immediately pointed out to me that he couldn't show this because my nipple was showing, which just floored me. And now to this day, I can't even look at the picture without.
That's just disturbing because, a lot of churches, I understand that they take it upon themselves to talk to these children about sexuality and this, that, and the other. But this one is just weird because it's like
it'll make you
blaming the children, for...
I'm telling you, aside from the fact that, what little I know of this church, aside from the fact that they are pro-America and soldier and police and government, well, not necessarily government, but like, the good soldiers, they're basically Calvinists. They're like the Westboro Baptist, except for, they actually like soldiers and don't say that they're a curse from God or whatever. Whatever the Westboro Baptist Church says. But yeah, they come off more like Calvinists, like everything's super strict.
Yeah.
First thing I ever heard about this church is...
I'm just wondering if it was like, if you ever... some young lady had her first period during... Sunday school, if everybody just started throwing tampons at her like in Carrie.
I'm pretty sure that we weren't allowed to make any of that normal. There was never, ever a period talk at all. I didn't learn a lot about periods and the way to handle them until I was well into my 20s.
Yeah.
All right, that was part of Christie's story, and if you want to hear the rest of it, and believe me, you'll want to listen to episode 2. So that's 2 stories about different religious groups, and don't get me wrong, there's going to be a lot of stuff about religion on our podcast because it's one of the things I think that provides unique perspective with people. Having a different religion from the main group you're around is definitely something that gives you a unique story, and I think an ain't normal story, and I don't mean that in any bad way. But sometimes it can be funny, sometimes it can be really harmful. We're going to cover both ends of it, and we might laugh and cry in the middle of a serious story. We might do both, but we're going to cover them. But it's not the only thing we're going to do. There's a lot of ways that things can be ain't normal, and for you to have a struggle, for you to have a unique perspective. So the 3rd episode, I wanted to intentionally go away from a religious theme. I thought we'd already covered a couple of them. We're definitely going to come back. So in the 3rd episode, I asked my friend Chris, TV actor, comedian, cancer survivor, and a lot of other facets to this guy. I almost said Moo-Moo. He used to go by the name Moo-Moo. I'm trying to call him Chris because he seems to prefer it now. If I slip up, I apologize for that. Well, we had him on to discuss this one side of his story, and that is always being the overweight guy, which eventually led up to him having a gastric sleeve implanted. So we're going to begin about the time he had the surgery, but also this is going to be more about him adapting to the changes with the surgery and how it affects him trying to be funny. He's always tried to be the funny guy in the room, but it's always, a lot of it's always revolved around being the fat guy, and now he's struggling with other things. Other things are necessarily going to become part of his act. That's what we talked about, and here's a little excerpt from it.
On November 13th, I had the surgery, and as of today, I'm down over 130 pounds.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I actually wore the shirt that I had to wear on Billy Bob's show. And if y'all ever, don't worry, I ain't expecting any of y'all to actually have seen the show. Not too many people did. But if you ever did see the show, you could see that the shirt was like 3 times too small for me. Now, it fits.
It fits. Awesome. It's even loose.
I know, right? That is awesome.
Yeah, I saw you, what was this, like the Monday before you had the surgery at the, that comedy, I guess, what was it?
Coffee Underground?
Yeah, the Coffee Underground. That night they had I don't know if you'd call it a festival, or it was some spotlight night where they had like 5 or 6 comedians rather than having a open
Oh
mic
yeah,
night.
yeah.
And,
I remember that.
Yeah, because you let me in.
Yeah,
You're like, I get a +1.
Yeah, you were coming in. I'm good with that.
So you did a really funny set that night, and it's like I just felt bad because I was like, oh, he's doing this, like it's clearly like the outlet for your anxiety at that point.
Oh God, you have no. I mean, but that's what comedy is.
Of course.
And see, that's the biggest problem with me right now is trying to learn how to do stand up again and not being the fat guy.
Oh, first of all, part of it, like there's, and we can talk about this another time, but there's like part of a stereotype. Oh, fat guys are funny, so you got an advantage starting out. Like that only gets you in the door.
And even then, you can only do so many fatty fall down jokes.
Exactly.
I mean, it's and now I'm not a good writer. I can wing stuff.
Yeah.
And I can throw stuff out, but if I actually sitting down and writing, I'm not good at that.
Right. Well, now you're gonna have to come up with a whole new bass.
I know, right? And that sucks.
You stop smoking weed, then your career's done.
Yeah, for real. But luckily, I will never stop smoking weed.
That's fair.
That's the one thing. I love that people go, well, you had the surgery. You don't still get the munchies? I'm like, yeah, I just don't act on them.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because
you have to have, don't they make you, like, I don't know, I used to love to watch the Learning Channel. They have a bunch of 600-pound shows. And I find them so inspirational because, like, I've always struggled with weight. I don't struggle with weight the way you struggle. I don't want to compare it, but, like, I mean, I was a fat little 14-year-old, and then I was skinny in high school, like, almost anorexically skinny, until college, and I got up to, like, 170 pounds. Now I'd kill to be back down to 170 pounds. But, so I understand what that struggle's like, but, and so when I see those shows where like some kid loses 125 pounds over the summer, then I feel inspired. But like those 600-pound shows, like they're hit and miss. It's like either they didn't do anything and the doctor's like, I'm not doing surgery. But there's a certain, like, you have to do certain things before the surgery, right? You have to prove that you're eating right, or does it? Well,
here's the thing. This is what I done. I knew I wanted to have the surgery a year before I could have the surgery.
Right.
So what I done is I went and done research and found out all the stuff that people were talking about they would have to do as far as the diets they would have to do, how you would have to eat afterwards, workouts, all this kind of stuff. Not only that, when you first started going to the doctor for the surgeon for the surgery, he would want you to go to another doctor for so long to prove that you're trying to lose weight under a doctor's care, all this kind of stuff, right? So I went ahead and done that my year before I ever met the surgeon.
Yeah.
I done all my stuff up front because, I mean, why am I going to go talk to the surgeon? He's going to tell me, oh, I can't touch you till another year. Okay, I'll do all the stuff I'm supposed to do. Yeah. That way when I come in, look, I've been fat long enough.
Yeah.
Cut my stomach, get this out of me, and let's get on with the process.
That's a good way to do it.
So, when I went in, they basically wanted to make sure that you were actually committed to doing the surgery as far as the lifestyle, because it's a huge lifestyle change.
I imagine so.
The fun part is they make you go to a psychiatrist.
I'm sure they do. Because, I mean, they got to make sure that you're going to be fit to handle it.
So I had to go to 2 psychiatrists.
Okay.
The first psychiatrist, I failed horribly.
Oh, no.
I told you, I'm an ass. This psychiatrist looked at me and says, do you think you have a problem with overeating?
Look, no, I'm oblivious.
I couldn't handle it. I went off for like 45 minutes telling this chick. Basically told her how stupid she was because she asked that damn question. Why do you ask a 455-pound damn man, do you have a problem with eating? No!
Because there's probably some 500-pounders coming in there. No, I don't hardly eat anything. It's like, well, no point in working on this guy.
Oh, my God. I mean, don't ask me dumbass questions and then expect me not to be a smart-ass bag. So I failed the first one horribly. She said that I was nowhere near fit to do all this. So I had to go to and play nice at another one. He actually, approved me to go through it, cleared me and everything for it. But the thing is, guys, if y'all do consider this, please, 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 I'm telling you, coming from a smart ass and an ass, I'm 9 months out. I'm going to tell you, this will screw with your head so bad because the way people perceive you comes across completely different. If you're anything like me, I've always been overweight. Now look, it's not like that I'm like skinny now, but people who knew me and see me now don't even hardly recognize me.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so now it's like I'm getting a chance to do a first impression with people all over again.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily, like, even from when I met you, if I didn't know you from the whole time through,
yeah.
If I saw you now, I might not recognize you because your hair was different. Like,
yeah, I mean,
you were 100 pounds or more, heavier.
I mean, it was
like, and you don't want to. Well, you don't want to like just be like, oh, there's another big guy. That must be Moo-Moo. Because, being big and having some friends that are big. You get mistaken for each other. It's, oh, this person only sees me as fat.
Right.
That's all they.
Well, I mean, to me, I never looked at it like, yeah. Look, I know my personality. It's hard to miss me.
Yeah.
Okay. I can be quiet in the corner and just observe and everything else when I want to. But by God, if I want you to know who the hell I am, oh, you're gonna know.
Yeah, eventually you're gonna be styling and profiling, or not styling and profiling. You're gonna be doing the fashionable Dusty Rhodes voice.
Oh yes. I'll stop it, babies. Yes, we're gonna break this down like this, babies. Sometimes you gotta walk with the walk, babies.
But I mean, some of us got it. Like I've heard people that I think had just been introduced to you, and somebody be like, "Oh, well, you know who you remind me of? You remind me of Chumley," and I was like, "Moo-Moo should just smash that person."
But honestly, I mean, that's how I got the TV show.
Yeah.
I mean,
like, you're a Chumley type,
right? Yeah. And I mean, at some point you have to learn. If you want to, sometimes you got to learn with. If people's going to stereotype you, run with the stereotype. Don't, if it's going to make you money and get you where you want to go, run with the stereotype. Yeah. It's just at the point I'm at now. I could no longer carry the weight. I could no longer be the stereotype.
Oh, yeah.
Something had to, because I was so scared. I was like 5 pounds away from not being able to walk.
Yeah, 455s. That's carrying a load.
Yeah.
Like I said, not on a real big frame to begin with.
Honestly, I don't see how I was moving as well as I was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of it was just me doing pure will going, I'm not going to be the fat guy that can't get out of the house.
Okay, I think that's a good place to stop with Chris's story for right now. If you want to know more about his story, go ahead and check out episode 3. So the way this format is gonna work is every week we're gonna let people tell their story, and we're gonna talk for about 45 minutes. It may be just completely free form. We may have a little structure to it, but come about 45 minutes, we're gonna find a good place to wrap up, and then we're gonna cut the microphone for the general audience. And we're going to go into what we're going to call extra innings. And at that point, we're going to continue talking until we're done covering a topic. That is going to be available for people who patronize us. Eventually, we're going to put up a Patreon account. As soon as we have it up, we'll start sharing it on our Facebook, Twitter. We'll put it in the episode notes, or we'll at least mention it on the episode. We're going to come up with a list of other benefits that go along with the patronage other than just the extra material, bonus content. The goal for the show at this point is we're going to be monthly until 2019, and then I'm going to reevaluate and see whether or not we need to go twice a month. So that's the plan for now. We're going to start out just sharing our content. Once we have our Patreon up, you'll be able to access the bonus material if you are a patron, the extra innings. Other little odds and ends that we're going to add for our patrons will be listed on Patreon as well. I think we're going to start out trying to do first of the month episodes, but maybe in 2019 we'll switch that to every 1st and 15th. I want to thank Kevin, Christie, and Chris for participating in the first 3 episodes. Couldn't have been more fun for me. I really enjoyed it. And once again, I want to thank Analog Heart for allowing us to use their music, and I'm going to let them play us out again. Thank you.
I never realized nights before, but everything that I do is carefully calculated just for you. I've shied away from bangs and I've taken off all of my favorite rings, specifically 'cause I know that you're not into those things.